Hello and welcome to My Politics' third international debate, hosted by My Politics.
Hello and welcome.
My name is Jan Romanowski, and I will be your host for this evening. Today, our guests will be discussing amongst themselves the very important topic of common European economic policy. Now, to introduce them, I'm very, very honored to have the following people join me today. First, we've got Vadim Derksen from Junge Alternative für Deutschland. You're muted, Vadim.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Nice having you here.
We've got Maciej Kalina from Młodzi dla Wolności, or Youth for Liberty in Poland.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
We've got Alexandra Mouton from Le Jeune Insoumis in France. I hope I pronounced that well. We've got Jan Romanowski from Dwars, Greonlinks, Jongeren in the Netherlands. Again, I hope I pronounced everything well.
Yes, well, I think you did a great job, and thanks, thank you for getting us here.
And also Markéta Plesníková from Mlade Ano in the Czech Republic.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for this opportunity.
Okay, to quickly go through the rules before we start, the debate will consist of 6 sections. During the first 4 parts, the participants will answer questions that were asked by the host. They got to know them beforehand, and each participant will have approximately 2 minutes to answer each question. In the 5th section, the participants will answer a question asked by yourselves, the audience. So we do recommend that you ask questions to our guests, preferably here on YouTube, but also on Twitter is fine. And in the last section of the debate, each of the participants will have around 2 minutes to speak on a topic of their choice regarding European economic policy. So what more there is to say, rather than let's start the debate. So first, the first question for the debate is, do you think a unitary European economic policy would be beneficial for your country? If yes, why? Or if no, why? And we're going to start with Vadim from Junge Alternative. Vadim, you seem to be muted, sorry.
I'm sorry. I always forget this little button there. Yeah, I believe that the unitary European economic policy is at the moment not a feasible option. We have it at some state right now, and Germany doesn't profit from it at all. It might be something to consider maybe on the long term, but for now, I would rather prefer a European economic integration of different intensities and different areas, let's say clusters or economics, which are kind of similar to each other. This is something you should consider before thinking on a greater scale for the whole Europe. So now you are muted.
Thank you very much, Vadim. Yes, the eternal problem of live streaming. And now, Markéta, if you can answer the same question.
Of course, thank you. I think first we need to answer the question, what is the current state of European economic policy? And we have to think about it at the roots and the major driving force behind the European Union lie in economic integration, in common market and common currency. And all the competencies and possibilities are narrowly limited in the European primary law, and treaties not yet provide the independent economic policy of the European Union. And now policymakers are actually faced with the task of limiting the acute socio-economic consequences of the pandemic on one hand, and on the other hand, finding the answers to the structural challenges posed by the globalization, digitalization, climate change. And I think common European policy economic is becoming increasingly necessary, and the expectations for it are growing. And we need to combine stimulation of the European economy and sustainable transformation of national economies. And the European economic policy should reorient towards sustainable and decarbonized growth that will promote the Europeanization and in long term the unitarization of national economic policies, because member states during the pandemic have possibly recognized that our even though our different economic policy models are really like different, and still we are really linked and chained together through the single market and the single currency. And even before pandemic, EU formulated 2 economic policy objectives, which is climate neutrality and digitalization. And I think the unitarization tendencies in the European Union do not seem to lead to centralization and supranationalization, and rather there's a mechanism for integrating and merging the European and national policies that are becoming apparent. And the unitarization of the EU does not end the member state economic policy, or does not even mean the death of the member states. And I think instead there is a new form of progressive interdependence and understanding that are developing. And stating by this, I think it's definitely beneficial for my country, Czech Republic, to become part of this merged common European economic policy.
Thank you, Marketa. And now, Maciej, what is your opinion on this question?
Thank you so much. I think that for Poland, a unitary economic policy provided by the European Union and joining it full force would be rather extremely detrimental. I would honestly extend it to every country within the European Union, not just Poland. However, I will focus on my country in regards to this question. The Polish economy is very, very specific in terms of its own economy, currency at the moment, and its own economic autonomy, and the ability to maneuver economically through certain hardships, especially considering my country has such a specific profile when it comes to our economy. Of course, we have switched over from a mostly farming economy over the last 20 years and have made huge progress in development. We are still much more fundamentally different on a cultural and economic level, and I believe that's reflected through a lot of issues that are currently being talked about within the European Union. I think a unitary policy would limit our ability to focus on our development goals, which are different than every other country's in the European Union, as well as their own goals, which they all also have. I believe that, as it was earlier mentioned by my colleague from the Young Alternative Party from Germany, that maybe in the future. However, personally, the only way I could ever see it happening would be if countries could suddenly get over their mass economic differences. And even if that did take place, I don't want a United States of Europe. I want a European Economic Union that's held in respect to what the European Union was founded on. So a unitary policy is not only limiting for my country, but I believe it is limiting to every country within the European Union, and it takes a strong hold in stopping the equal development of our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maciej. And now answering will be Alexandra.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for before, but my internet connection went off. So to answer this question, I think it depends on how the European economic policy is defined by the treaties, and currently it's defined so that it's reinforcing the free market at the cost of social rights, at the cost of democracy and popular sovereignty, and at the cost of the environment. The current treaties are enabling social dumping because there is no social and fiscal harmonization. We have to harmonize our social and fiscal policies with a non-decreasing clause, so that the states that are protecting the most their citizens can continue to do so, and those who have not those social protection yet, they can go and install their policies at their time, because we all have different economic situation for now, and we have to develop ourselves in respect of our social social state situations, and also social democracy. So we should also disobey those budgetary rules that are completely arbitrary, as defined by the Treaty on Stability, Coordination and Governance in the Economic and Monetary Union, that enables all those social dumping and the destruction of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, last but not least, Jano, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, for Dwars, it is not a question of what European economic policy you want, but it's more the question what kind of European economic policy you want. Because in our view, it's in many ways it's already there. We have the euro, we have the European market, and within such a market, a common economic policy, at least within some subjects, is just necessary to manage it all. Because as we now know, I think the euro is the most important example of where European economics is not working that good at all. And the problem is that we here have a common currency, the euro, but that we don't really have a common policy that is that is crucial to manage the euro well. And that's also something that we think led to the financial crisis, because of the lack of a common European economic policy, which also made it really hard to get out of this crisis. And Dwars proposes a European economic policy that works for everyone, it works for climate, but also that it works for all citizens. What we now think is that European economics is too much focused on multinationals, too much focus on the people that are already the well-to-do, as we can say. But there's not. But for most people, especially for people who don't have that much money, that much income, or sense labor, are without. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for everyone at this moment. And also, if you have a look at common policy when it comes to climate, we know that of course economics have a huge impact on climate within the European Union and also worldwide. So in that sense, for us, it's not a question what kind of what do you want your common European economic policy, more what kind of European economic policy do you want? And we choose for a social economic policy that works for everyone.
Thank you, Jana, for that. Maciej has requested a point of information and wants to refer to Jano's statement. Maciej, you have around 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. I will be brief. I just wanted to say, first of all, there's no way to make a unitary economic policy that works for everybody when there's so much diversity, especially within Europe, and not to mention certain European countries. But on top of that, you mentioned the financial crisis. I just wanted to point out that the reason it happened wasn't because of a lack of unitary monetary policy, but a very flawed one led by a total fixed exchange rate and free capital flow without sovereign monetary policy, which literally was basically just the Washington Consensus being forced over on Europe, and this idea that if we all follow the same rules America did, everything will go great. So it was actually what you're saying that caused that problem, because the only country to avoid it was Poland, and that was only because we didn't have that unitary policy thrown on us.
And Jana, would you like to refer to that quickly in around 30 seconds to 1 minute?
Well, if we have a look at these kinds of, for example, there were a lot of people without labor, without work. And also we know that economics in European Union are already quite integrated. So when tackling these questions, we don't think that we can see these separated. If economics really work a lot together, if they're integrated, then we cannot say that there's no common policy needed to solve that. So in that sense, yeah, I do quite agree on the monetary part of your story. But to say that countries can solve it only on their own, also in economic sense, where they're so dependent on each other, it doesn't really make sense for us.
Thank you very much for that. And this was the first question and our first rebuttal point. Now let's get into the second question, which is, there have been discussions in the European Union on introducing a European minimum wage. Should the European Union proceed with introducing this idea? If yes, How should it be done? If no, why not? And to start us off, Alexandra.
So we think that we should promote a minimum wage in every European country that is equivalent to 75% of the median wage of the country. But we think that it's not the priority. We should, like I said before, socially harmonize our policies. Like, for example, reduce the maximum working time that is allowed. For now, it's 48 hours a week, and we should reduce that. Sometimes even it can even go to 65 hours a week, with all those things that can pass by. And we want a fiscal harmonization so that all the entreprises can, so that it doesn't make the social dumping.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And now the same question on the European minimum wage, Vadim.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I generally do not support a minimum wage because if you look at Germany, just at Germany, not at Europe at the whole, we have now our minimum wage, and it is so counterproductive right now because we have so many wage levels even in our different states. If you know, we have about 16 different states. And in East Germany, we have a lower income than in West Germany, and the economics would has problems with catching on in these areas. And imagine just how massive the differences is in the EU member states, and how big the problems would be there if you raise. Yeah, and that's the next question. Do you want to raise to one level, or do you want to level it down, like level down in Germany and level up in some other East European countries, which would help maybe them on the first hand and in the right moment right there, but would decrease the income in the Western European countries. So it doesn't really work. I don't see there any concept behind that which makes totally sense to me. I think the economy should grow on a natural way, and the wages will also grow on a natural way. We see a shift of let's say one word. Let's a shift of wealth where the economy is less regulated, let's say. And this is what I think is the best solution for Europe.
Thank you very much, Vadim. And now, Jano, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, the short answer is yes, we are in favor of the European minimum wage. But there are a lot of buts. Because first, we know most European countries have a minimum wage, which is already quite, which of course we support. But a minimum wage doesn't solve every economic problem. We know we also have a growing flexibilization within economics, also within the Netherlands, and that the youngest generation, our generation, is probably the most flexible generation and the less, we can say less sure generation within current economics, and maybe within current, in all the times. But what is difficult, of course, for us is that there is really a difference in the level of prices through the whole European Union, and that also, of course, influences the level of the minimum wage. In that sense, it would also make we see that it makes it difficult, and in that sense, for us, it is absolutely something that first should be regulated on country levels. But in the future, when economic integration through Europe and labor market integration will continue and increase, then of course it would be a good option to also harmonize it through the whole of Europe. And in that sense, of course, to summarize it, yes, it is a good idea for us. It's absolutely a good idea, but it's for the future. And there are first other European economic problems to solve until we are there.
Thank you very much, Jano. And now, Marketa, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. For me, European minimum wage means that everybody in Europe lives in dignity whenever they work. But because I think also during this crisis, during the pandemic, it showed that many of those people who are workers that live in poverty, which is around 10% in the European Union, are on the front line during the crisis. It was the caregivers or health professionals or even cleaning staff. I think what is the first step is the implementation of minimum wage in all European states, because now only I think like around 21 of the states have some form of minimum wage, and the rest is done by collective bargaining. And I think the aim of the European Union should be to create some kind of framework that improves the access of all workers to the protection offered by the minimum wages. And it would also help to improve the working condition and attractiveness of these professions that are under the stress, and also combat the growing numbers of working poor in times of crisis. And I think it should be done by setting stable and clear criteria rather than imposing a precise amount for this minimum wage in all countries. And these criteria should be respected as a minimum. For example, it can be criterion of percentage of gross median wage in that country. And these indicators that should be selected should ensure a decent quality of life for workers. And I think still like treaties recognize competence of each member state in setting wages, but there's some kind of space for Commission, for example, to resort some flexible interpretation that wage is also part of working condition, but on the other hand, we have to take into account that this possible directive of the Commission should not jeopardize the viability of European businesses.
Thank you very much, Marketa. And last but not least, Maciej, what is your opinion on a European minimum wage?
Thank you so much, Jan. Well, to begin, I'd like to say that I think this is beyond a damaging idea for the entire Union. It is also extremely idiotic, and I mean that with the fullest respect. There seems to be a unilateral misunderstanding between minimum wage and purchasing power. Higher minimum wages don't equal higher purchasing power, and higher purchasing power equals a higher standard of living. Just because we raise a wage doesn't mean people's lives will get better. In fact, no, it means there will be further economic consequences. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. You can print as much money as you want, you can pay people as much as you want, but I don't want to end up like Venezuela or any other country that didn't take their monetary situations seriously. Any economist will tell you that workers are a market, just like anything else, and it is a simple supply and demand curve. Setting a minimum wage not only limits the amount of pay workers can work for, because some people would work for less. Workers compete with each other. That's what they do. That's what keeps new industries going. That's what has innovation rise. It's normal. It's natural. This idea that without minimum wage we would have people groveling in the streets for food is ridiculous, because then in this wonderful capitalist society we live in, companies wouldn't have anyone to buy their products, and that is another problem. Of course, I realize that a lot of people may think that removing minimum wage can't solve anything because it hasn't, but before anyone responds to that, I'd like to just point out that the fact is that it's the countries, governments, central banks that make money off of destabilizing currencies, which loses your purchasing power, lowering your standard of living. It is not the government's job, especially not the bureaucratic unions, which sits above the government, to beat down businesses and the free market in order for people to suffer at the hands of banks while billionaire elites, continue to make more money off of them. I mean, the fact is that the level of misunderstanding of where the issue is amazing. I see that I'm running out of time, so I'll just say one last thing. It's that it's not the businesses that are your enemy. It's the banks, the elites, the corporate entities, and literally passing a minimum wage only helps them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Maciej, and this very lively debate on this question. And now, going on to the third question, is we're in Europe, we are currently in the process of ratifying and introducing the Next Generation EU Recovery Fund post the COVID-19 pandemic. And in your opinion, in what way should the Next Generation EU Recovery Fund encourage employment and participation of the youth in the post-COVID-19 economy? And starting us off will be Marketa from Mlade Ano.
Yes, thank you. I think it's like in the name of the institution or the initiative, like the Next Generation EU. So definitely now, I think it's a time to listen to us, to the voice of the youth. And I think the plan also must be in line with all the climate commitments, and we have to ensure that no one is left behind in the green transition, and especially create a space for the young people, because if we do not this, we risk to become a lockdown generation of crisis, because this is the second crisis when we are looking back at the economic crisis that really hit the young people hard, and we are on the front lines when it comes to feeling the social and economic burden of job losses. And we have to ensure that the funding not only focuses on youth employment, but also is invested towards like creating a strong social safety net to protect young people against poverty. And definitely member states, when dealing with the individual projects and so on, should prioritize young people, and for example, by multiplication of all youth exchanges, mobility, solidarity actions, or improving job quality, because half of the young workers are employed on temporary contracts. And also,
Marketa, we're going to need you to be finishing off here, so you can finish your sentence if you want.
We definitely should also strengthen the European identity through this project.
Okay, and now the same question on this very important matter for Europe in these hard COVID-19 times. Maciej, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jan. Well, first of all, I would like to start that this is nothing more than a scam, not a pandemic. I understand that's a controversial statement and many people may be hurt by it, but I'm done sacrificing the mental stability of young people, the economic stability of institutions, destroying small businesses while large corporations gain profit from government subsidies while others are left to starve on the street. I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. So no, I don't think the bureaucratic system, which has implemented such restricting laws and damaging economic laws, making so far making any cure for this situation worse than the actual pandemic itself. The economic downfall that will happen over the next 2-3 years is still coming, and it's going to get worse and worse. And no taxed money taken from the pockets of hardworking Europeans and put back into the system is going to fix that, especially not through the hands of bureaucrats who have no idea how to disperse the money, and and while attempting to do so, will waste more than half of it on ridiculous items. It has happened before, it will happen again. It is an ineffective system. Taxes should be lowered, restrictions should be lowered, trade should be promoted, restrictions regarding the pandemic should be completely removed. There should be no enforcement or limitations based on vaccinations. It is an absolutely horrific system that we are looking at right now. Any money that is already registered to helping countries should be dispersed at the lowest economic level, that is to the smallest counties and principalities, for their governments decide what to do so with. But at no way should the national systems at any point anymore be deciding what to do with this money, because they have proven from the beginning they are incompetent, and they have created such a problem all over the world that it is absolutely unprecedented, and trying to fix it will not, and we should not trust the same people to fix the problem they created. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maciej. And now the same question to you, Alexandra.
So we think that this system is not really fun. The next generation EU recovery fund will be no use to people in Europe because the payment of those European funds are always determined by structural reforms, such as we have seen in France, liberalization of the train or the instauration of the competitive pitch in the energy sector that always have an influence on social workers' situation and also the environment. And we think that all those funds, we have to, they have to be determined by social and ecological and even democratical criteria that are defined by everyone in Europe. And we should stop giving money to large companies without any conditions because they are not creating any work, they are just keeping the money. And I think that we should, in general, completely change the current system, democratic system in Europe. And we also think that, for example, if we can't renegotiate all the European treaties, we will disobey if we get the power in France. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And now the question on this recovery fund, this common thing for all of us Europeans, will be the next person answering will be Jano. Jano, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, what for Dwars is really important is how the money is spent, and of course how it goes to young people, or it goes to the multinationals. Because as we all know, our generation is maybe it's the generation that doesn't know sure if they will get better than their parents, and that's a problem. But also this generation also faced a lot of flexibilization, a flexible economy, with not a lot of sure, secure jobs. The only flexible jobs like for delivery are really popular. And these are hardworking people. These are hardworking people that also don't get the money that they deserve, and that's just because the market is failing to allocate this money to them. So in that sense, I wouldn't say that the tax is a problem, but in that sense, the tax is a solution to really get money to the hardworking people, or maybe to the people that want to work hard but now cannot get a job because they just cannot find a job. And in that sense, of course, it really depends on where do we spend this money on. We should spend this money on the jobs of the future. So these are jobs that are secure for young people that work on that are sustainable. So jobs in fighting climate change are important for us. It's also jobs in the social sector, just within healthcare, just within education. It's all the sectors that keep our society turning. But in that sense, what we need is that people go there, that there is work, that there is secure work for these people, these hardworking people, and that's also what we think that the EU recovery month should go to, and that's what the money should be spent on. Not on the big multinationals that already have enough, that already really profit, sometimes even profit from this crisis, but the people that really need it, that work hard.
Thank you, Jan.
And I'm looking forward to the reaction of Maciej.
Yes, because as Jano said, Maciej has a rebuttal statement for Jano. Maciej, unfortunately, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. You know, that terrible little button. All right. Yes. As I was saying, thank you for letting me respond. And I just wanted to ask, at what level does the institution that has been so careless and incompetent in handling this situation, what makes you positive that it in any way will be capable of giving hardworking people money? So you're saying that the very same institution that has caused this intense problem is going to take money from other places, from other people, and get it to the hardworking people who its lives it ruined by creating this situation, instead of cutting taxes and letting those hardworking people keep the other 30% of their paycheck. It's better to take it from somebody else and give it to them. That's what I'm understanding, and I don't see the line of logic there. Thank you.
Jano, would you like to respond to that?
Yes. Well, I think what we need here is the kind, and that's the discussion. For us, the European Union is there and the governments are there. And the question is, what do we ask from them? What do we want them to do? And what we want them to do is to decrease flexibilization, to make more secure jobs, and to give more social security for the future. And that's what we're asking them. And yes, in that sense, yes, the EU indeed has shown that it's often there for the capitalists, for the multinationals, and not enough for common people. But we think that should change. And in that sense, if we think the EU would choose for that, for these people, and for a policy that works for everyone, then that is absolutely something that we can support.
I see Maciej would like to respond once more. This is one opportunity throughout the debate where he can respond once more. So the floor is yours again, Maciej. Around 30 seconds to a minute for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say that, great, I'm happy we're there with getting blue-collar workers what they deserve, 100%. But it's not going to happen through the governmental institutions that are incompetent. By letting them keep their money, by letting hardworking people, you want to give them job security, cut the regulations that the European Union has created, destroying their industries. You want to help them, you want to eliminate the problem. The problem is the European Union and its incompetence. And the level of taxation, regulation is driving their jobs into the ground. Giving them money, investing in futures that they don't know how to work in isn't going to save their lives. Giving people individual freedom, individual responsibility, and the ability to move the socioeconomic ladder is going to help. And that is involved with purchasing power. And purchasing power does not come from social benefits. It does not come from raising minimum wage. It comes from a lack of regulation and an ability to create profit. And that is only done when the banks and the very institutions that are destroying free market systems, like as you were saying, when these institutions create problems, right? They debase economies. That's what banks do. They profit from it. And what they do when they profit is they hurt blue-collar workers. Thank you.
And again, Jano, 30 seconds for you if you wish, unless you're going to pass.
So to keep it short, well, I think we can continue entering these circles, because Maciej is seeing the European Union as a problem at all. Well, I see the policy as a problem. So if the policy of the EU hasn't always been good, absolutely, I totally do agree on that. But then we choose for a better policy and not to abolish the European Union. And that's the choices we made. We're choosing for the future instead of abolishing everything that has not been working in the past. We want to choose for something that works for the future.
Thank you very much for this lively debate and several rebuttals between Maciej and Jano. And now, just to remind everyone of the question before Vadim answers, the question was, in what way would the Next Generation EU Recovery Fund encourage employment and participation of the youth in the post-COVID-19 economy? Vadim, the floor is yours.
First, if you wonder why my background changes constantly, it's because somebody booked the rooms wrong, so I'm wandering here while all other rooms getting taken. Maciej, I have to agree on many points with you. I think you're right about the problems which the EU creates, and I have to also to add something to this. The thing is, we try to give our money, or we give our money to people who never earned it, and they should solve the problems they created. So how can we do that? I mean, and especially we know how the European Union worked in the past. They did it most of the time in an ideological way. not in an economical way. So they see they create some bubbles with some ideological ideas which they fund, and this creates such a disturbance in the societies. And I have to remind you also, guys, here in Germany, we have the highest taxes and expenses in the world. We are number one. Who I think Belgium was before last year, and now we even passed Belgium with our taxes, and we are the guys who have to pay that in the end, or most of it. And now the Britons, they left the EU. We have to take also the biggest part, which they have spent before. We took it over. So for us, it's just a losing game. It's a big hole where the money just vanishes for us. So I don't see any plus or let's say some positive way from the EU, and the new fund, recovery fund, is also such a tool which just will destroy our money.
Thank you very much to all our participants for this very lively discussion on the EU Recovery Fund. And now the fourth question, so the last in the scene questions round and these sections, is a very short and simple yet very important, one of the most important questions for all member states of the European Union. Namely, should all EU member states be forced to join the Eurozone? Should we make all future members as well as current members come and start and replace the current currency with the euro? First up, we've got Jano. The floor is yours.
Well, Dwars is very nuanced on this question. Because no, we don't think that everyone should join the euro tomorrow. And no, we don't think that we should force any country to join the European Union. But there are some problems. I mean, first we have the internal market that in many senses is really different between all the countries. If you know, in Poland, the wages are lower, the prices are lower, like, for example, in the Netherlands. So what we then get, there are brickers coming from Poland to the Netherlands to work here, and the Dutch brickers can't compete with them. And of course, that's a problem, because that's not fair. But then the problem is that the prices in Poland are lower than within the Netherlands, and the wages are lower, etc. So that's it. So there is a problem. But on the other hand, you don't want to force countries to join the euro in that sense. Because within the European Union, we have the common market, we have Schengen, we have free flow of capital, goods, and services. And of course, many countries join the exchange rate mechanism. So in that sense, we think that joining the common market should at least go together with an exchange rate mechanism. That in that sense, we can, within not too much time, maybe within 10 years, create a more or less equal playground for European labor market, because that's now a big problem, and that makes it not fair.
Please be coming to an end.
Yes, I'm done.
Great, thank you very much, Jano. And now, Alexandra, what's your opinion on the common euro, on everyone joining the eurozone?
So we think that we cannot force members or future member states to join the Eurozone, because we think that for such an important decision, it's anti-democratic. Every country should decide by referendum, for example, such important decisions, because we believe in self-determination. Merci.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And now I'd just like to remind all of our audience that we're taking your questions for our participants in the next section. So don't be embarrassed, don't be scared. Ask away, and I'm sure our guests will be more than happy to answer your questions and any of your queries. And now, Vadim, what's your opinion on the Eurozone?
I would like to add also to Alexandra's point something. Not only the country itself and the people of some country should decide by itself and in a democratic democratic way, but also the existent countries who have the euro already, they should also decide whether they would take one country into the eurozone or not. Because in the end, what we saw, for example, again, Germany, the economy of Germany is way stronger than the economy of Greece. And what happened is here that the lower economy all of a sudden became a good rate for debts, better than before. They could get loans way cheaper than ever before. And now Germany or other countries, not only Germany, but all the northern countries are paying the debts of the lower economy countries in the south. So this is what destroys Europe, I think. I think you cannot force people into Europe or the European, the Eurozone. I think low economy country, they would be happy to join, but it's not always the best way for all of them. So whether we should decide or not, all the countries in the Eurozone should be involved in this.
Great. Thank you very much, Vadim. In the meantime, Jano has asked to refer to Alexandra's point, which we didn't manage to do beforehand. So returning to that statement, Jano, you have around 30 seconds.
Yes, Alexandra, you mentioned that you wanted to have a referendum within every EU country before joining the euro. And as you know, this hasn't happened in any country that's joined the euro yet. And I think that there are now about 18 countries. What should they do? Should they still have a referendum, or should we keep it like this and continue to the future? And what if these countries would get out of the euro? Well, how would we solve this many disadvantages that it would cause?
Alexandra, would you like to answer?
Yes, I just didn't understand. So if whether we have a referendum in every country or what? I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah. May I?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Well, for example, France is already in Europe, but never has had a referendum on it. Should we still do that? And what if the turnout will be that France will want to leave the euro? How could we solve these economic but also social disadvantages that it would cause?
Yeah, for example, in France we already have euro, and there was a referendum about it, which people decided to have euro at the time. In France, every important decision of Europe is voted by a referendum. For example, the Constitution of 2005, France said no, but then there was the Lisbon Treaty in 2007 that mostly kept everything that was said in 2005. And so the democracy was not respected, but that is another thing. And for the euro, for example, in France, we shouldn't go out of the euro because it would give us many other problems, but we should, like, make policies to stop the social dumping and reinforce all the social worker rights, have other policies about environment and all that. And for those countries that don't have a euro yet, they should decide whether or not to join, but we cannot force them. That's what I meant.
Thank you very much for that to Jana and Alexandra. And now, Maciej, just to remind everyone and yourself what the question was: should all EU member states be forced to join the Eurozone? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honestly, it would not surprise me if the if a democratic deficit monster that is the European Union were to force something upon its member states like this, or at least bully them into it through policy. I think it is beyond, it's not even up to discussion. I mean, just looking at history back to 2008, when I recalled how Poland was one of the only few countries that was, somewhat escaped the wrath of the 2008 financial crisis, it was because of our own economic autonomy. It was because of the fact that we were able to change our interest rates and bring in investors when other countries were tanking. The unitary policy and the Eurozone, which is driven by a unitary policy because it is driven by a central European bank, comes with the fact that we are losing our entire national economic autonomy. How and what we do with our money is still up to us to some extent, but we are completely losing the ability to bring in or lose investors. I think it's too big of a piece of the autonomy of peoples who especially came from post-communist countries and know what it's like not to have their own economic autonomy to even propose this kind of idea. I don't think Poland belongs in the Eurozone. I don't think it has any chance in the Eurozone. I think it would be damaging for my country, for the people here. And I think that what happened to Greece, what happened to Lithuania, I think those are prime examples of the uncaring and lack of interest and lack of a higher level of understanding of what the economic effects of such decisions are is to blame here. Because I don't believe that a currency is what builds the European Union. I mean, in general, I don't think anything does other than spite. But that's a different discussion. I just certainly believe that the Eurozone is taking away the necessary autonomy that barely any countries have in Europe anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maciej. And now, to end off our discussion and our prepared, let's call that this section, Marketa, should all EU member states be forced to join the Eurozone? What is your opinion on this matter?
Well, my opinion is that we are already obliged to join the Eurozone, but there is no set time frame when the countries should join. And now I will talk from Czech perspective because we are also not part of the Eurozone, the same as Poland, for example. And still, like for years, we have met some of the Maastricht criteria. Now we fulfill only one. But the topic of euro is not only like fiscal or monetary issue in Czech Republic, it's also like political one. And the popular support for euro among the Czech citizens is around 33%, one of the lowest in the European Union. And there is a huge distrust and contempt. It's more issue of sovereignty, and the euro become some kind of like synonymous to the debacles of the euro during the crisis or the Greek crisis. And we as Czech really like pride ourselves in our independent monetary policy. And like we really love Czech koruna, which is our currency. And still, even though there's a risk of like Czech Republic becoming really like a small player in the European Union, especially after the United Kingdom, also the country without euro left, still I think there is no political will yet to set some framework. The same did our government that said like, yeah, we will join the euro, but we don't know when. So I think there should be definitely not like forcing us to join the Eurozone, but more like creating really attractive and stable framework of the euro, because the Eurozone it's not the Eurozone that we sign up to join when we were joining the European Union. A lot of things happened, and now I think we should more focus on the reform of the European Union or the Eurozone, and then like we should definitely join by the will, not by the force.
Thank you very much, Marketa. And before we end our section, yet again, Jano has a rebuttal statement and a question to Maciej. Let me apologize for that, for these slight technical issues where we skip one participant. But Jano, the floor is yours. You may ask your question to Maciej.
No problem at all. Let's solve that. Yeah, Maciej, you mentioned the European Union, in your view, is not that democratic, but that a bit surprised me. Because as far as I know, the countries are sovereign and the EU isn't, and the countries choose to be within the European Union and not the other way around. And moreover, we have the European Parliament that's chosen by all European citizens, And also we have within a lot of subjects, there needs to be unanimity between all the countries, which sometimes makes it really difficult to make decisions. So what does for you make the European Union undemocratic? And if you don't agree on that, why don't you get out?
Okay, so I'd like to start by asking you, Juno, do you know how the legislative process step by step works within the European Union?
Well, I know that it's really difficult, and there are a lot of steps.
Yeah. So I recommend looking at the specifications because it's something I studied at university. I'd like to tell you right now that just the process by itself should be at least to some level concerning. It is extremely revised and sought through national parliaments, but the fact is, like you said, only the parliament is elected by the people. Outside of that, it's appointed ministers, councilmen from individual governments that no longer have to represent the same standards that the parties who were chosen and elected and then chose them to uphold. That democracy is lost through the process. On top of that, we have the fact that but this discussion is about monetary policy, so I'll try to keep it short to that. The fact is that when it comes to the European Union, it has shown that through regulations and restrictions, it can pressure members to do what it needs. That is not democratic. It moves along the sides of follow our ideology, follow our thought process, or we will have economic consequences.
Maciej, please be coming to an end.
Of course, if it's through anything else, I think just the fact of such an authoritarian hand completely undermines any democratic pillars that the European Union could uphold on its own. Thank you.
Jano, any response from you, or should we go to the next section?
Well, Dwars thinks that the European Union. Well, we can of course stop with European Union. Of course, it's a choice of all countries to be inside of that. And if Poland doesn't like that, they can get out. And Britain showed that that's possible. But in that sense, if we don't have European Union, there's still a kind of independence of countries. And in that sense, when we have a European Union, there is a kind of democracy that should make better. But there is democracy. And like, for example, when we have something like the United Nations that we can work together, there's not anything that can be chosen by citizens directly. So in that sense, I think European Union democracy should be enhanced. But I think it's still harder to have a kind of international democracy than not having anything and just letting it to international institutions citizens absolutely cannot influence.
Thank you very much, Jano. And we're going into the next section. You still have time.
I'm sorry, do I not get a rebuttal?
If you 15 seconds for you, Maciej.
All right. I don't know what kind of inclusive mindset that is, but that either you get it with us or you get out is the exact reason. It's the exact mentality that the problem is. That's what I'm talking about. That exact thing you said at the beginning. If you don't like it, leave. So what? We are supposed to be, I'm all down. If we could just stay with Schengen and some basic common security policies, that'd be fantastic. I'd be 100% down. But the fact is, it's not possible in this climate and market run by hegemonic European banking institutions that beat down and destroy autonomy within its union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maciej, and thanks a lot to all of our participants for these first four sections. And now for your participation, we're going to start asking questions you have asked in the comment section throughout this debate to our participants. And starting with Alexandra, we've got a question. Sorry, not this one. How has the COVID-19 pandemic shown that a well-developed joint social policy is crucial for economic stability? You have around 2 minutes to answer. The floor is yours.
So what we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic is that all the poverty, everything, all the unemployment and everything was increased by this pandemic, and that all the social policies were not enough. When you see, like in France, they have used the pandemic to close industries and to make them to another country where Europe and our government gave them money, and sometimes they go to Poland, Turkey, and stuff. If we had developed joint social policies, we could, like, planify employment everywhere in Europe. There would not be any social dumping, and we could, like, decrease all this poverty and social and unemployment, and it would be crucial for economic stability, because when there is less employment, then there is more consumption, and like the economy works.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, for answering the question from our audience. And now, slightly less economic, but still to do with economics, a large matter for Poland and for the Czech Republic at the current moment. One of our viewers was wondering, Marketa, as coming from the governing party of the Czech Republic, is our Prime Minister, perhaps you have heard, telling the truth that there has been a deal has been achieved with your Prime Minister, with Prime Minister Babiš about the Turów electrical plant. And to expand this, because it's a very, very short question, what are the effects? Why is this important? Why economic regulations between countries, economic relations in the EU are so important for EU member states? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I hope I understand the question right. The persona of our Prime Minister and like some disputes around the usage of European funds and everything is really showing some kind of like how important is to set some boundaries between like what has to be done at the national level or level of national states and at the European level. And I think we also have to somehow like respect that we as nations have some laws, and for example, when it comes to our Prime Minister, we have, or like the other parties, adopted special law ensuring that the all the I don't like to say institutions and so on make sure that there is no paying European money to the Andrej Babiš used to be like his pharaohs, and now we all fulfill like all the national criteria, but this national dispute has been moved to the European level. Still, like I think it's more like a political issue than the practical, because by practical, like there is our national court that is now deciding whether or not all the criteria were fulfilled or not. And I think like we should all somehow respect the sovereignty of national courts in this, and not to put it like into European perspective, because this was only like on the national level, because no European money has been paid to the Agrofert, which is like the so-called like fund and I think, yeah, we can discuss this issue because it's more related, I think, to the current issue than like the economy.
Thank you very much for this and for a great answer to this complex question with many fields. And now the next question is to Jano. Again, also a very long question, an interesting one. Jano, should the EU introduce new, harsher green measures? What should these be? Perhaps any additional taxes or penalties? What would you do as the Green Party if the Greens, and more specifically the Dutch Greens, would have absolute control over the European Union?
It sounds like a dream that's far from reality, I'm afraid. But that's a really broad question. I'll also try to broadly answer it. Well, first, of course, you have the climate goals of Paris that are fine. We're glad that they're there, but they should be higher. For Dwars, there should be a decrease of 90% of carbon emission in 2027, and we should have zero carbon emission in 2035. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, we have to really invest in a social climate transition, because we know that there are sometimes for some people it's really much harder, to behave in a way that's climate environment friendly than for other people. So also we need funds to get out of it. And another thing that has to change is the common agricultural policy of the European Union. As you know now, there's a lot of money going to big farmers that are often really polluting, but also the small farmers, which we think that's the future. Small farmers, small scale, and also with selling the products within a direct environment instead of transporting it through the whole of Europe. They should get more money instead of these big companies. And that's in that sense, I think the most important points that I can mention now. But the most important thing is that we work together to it as Europeans. I mean, Europe is the biggest market within the world, and also one of the biggest polluters within the world. So if we can take serious steps and can be an example for the rest of the world, I think that would also absolutely work well.
Thank you very much. And I see Maciej would like to offer a rebuttal to Jano yet again. Is that correct, Maciej?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
So please, the floor is yours. The next minute.
Yeah, I just had one note to point out, because I think it's important to note that the fact is that many green alternatives to everyday problems we face in today's society have been available for a long time. If it's hemp instead of tree logging, if it's other alternatives for renewable energy, the fact is that it's not individual people like you, me, or your neighbor who's destroying the environment by drinking from a plastic straw. No, it's multi-billion-dollar corporations that make so much money that they not only crowd pack and fund politicians that later win and blame it on people like us so they can continue doing what they want. Taking money from the European Union and funding new projects isn't going to motivate those companies creating the problems. It is a corrupt and disgusting institutional system that doesn't care about you, me, or the environment. They just keep saying that they do so that we continue to put them in power. If we want to make a difference, we have to do it at a local level responsibly without the big guys' help, because it's up to us, not the government. Thank you.
Jano, would you wish to respond to Maciej?
Well, I think Maciej, of course, has some interesting points. We think it should be both. I think, in short, we should say think globally, act locally. Because we know we can't solve climate change at ourselves. We can't solve it only at the local level. But of course, we need many, many, many small steps on a local level. And I think we think that in the end will bring us the furthest. But if we only do that as the Netherlands, or even as the city where I'm living, that's of course not going to work. So that's why we also need some common goals. And I don't agree that if Europe wouldn't care about people, Europe wouldn't care about you and me, why would they then make a European green policy? Why would there be a European Green New Deal? If they don't care about us and don't care about nature, I don't see that.
Thank you very much, Jano. And now, in that case, let's go to the next question. And the next question is to Maciej. And our audience is asking Maciej is, if the EU is faulty and unreliable, what do you see as a stable recipe for the future development of our continent? Because the comment is rephrased later. And if I could ask you, because the question doesn't specify, to include economic measures mainly.
I'll be honest, I'd be more than happy to get rid of the Polish pit tax too, man. We can talk about that as well. But I mean, when it comes to a safe alternative for our country, it's not far. We have Schengen, we have NATO, we have NATO is a different discussion, but there is some form of security in case that's your concern. I mean, I believe there's a much more preferable alternative to that as well. But the fact is that when the European coal and steel economy was created, it had no idea of a complete and collateral end goal of the European Union we have to today. You know, the fact is that the way the European Union is like I said, extremely problematic. I believe that if we were better held together by a economic union as it was previously envisioned, respecting each other's member states' autonomy and without any enforced regulations or ideology, and that's a big part because the European Union has no right being ideological, and it so deeply is. I believe that a most stable alternative would be a simple economic union, as was previously created, with free movement of people, and it's completely possible because Norway and Sweden, for example, aren't within our European Union. However, we have no problem traveling and trading with them either. So same way as other states can be involved with us, we can be involved with them. We can create separate treaties on separate bilateral and even trilateral levels. It's not unreachable. Of course, it's much more complicated. However, it would lead to a larger stability. But of course, that would lead to some countries being able to function better and some worse. But that's based on the free market, and of course that can be helped and regulated as well. Just because without the European Union we can't have goodwill, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that we need the European Union to help people. That countries can't help each other without it. It's a ridiculous idea. If we are truly good as Europeans, then we can function without it, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maciej. And the last question from our audience to Vadim is from a participant, from an audience members who asks, "What do you think about the reprographic fee?" And the other term for our audience, the other term for this would be also the private copying levy. Vadim, the floor is yours.
Reprographic fee. What exactly do they mean by that? I mean, for the environment, or what is exactly meant? I mean, I'm generally against taxation.
Just to clarify, so perhaps because this may be unclear for yourself and many of our viewers, just to read a quick definition: a private copying levy is a government-mandated scheme in which a special tax or levy is charged on purchase of recordable media. So it's all to do with copyright. Quite
okay.
often.
So okay. So you mean like okay? This sounds like a flat rate on tax. Let's say, is that something what we're talking about?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Like a flat rate on tax, like everybody pays the same?
No, it's essentially a tax on or additional tax, indirect tax on recordable media. So data storage, so for example, CDs, camera phones,
okay,
pen drives, etc.
Why would I don't get the question, but I don't understand why we should pay that, or what's exactly the meaning of the question. I'm sorry. In general, but let me respond maybe also to the previous question about the CO2 and so on, and what the Dutch guy said. Sorry, I don't see your name right now. China, for example, and this is what nobody mentioned here before. China has the biggest carbon emissions combined with all other industrial nations. Germany, for example, or let's say the European Union, is way far behind far behind the US and China together. So I don't see any necessity of the European Union to create the biggest policies, the biggest taxes on that. Why should we put handcuffs on our economy, let's say, and slow ourselves down while others are just pushing the economy extremely high, like China? Why should we do that?
Thank you very much. Some hard questions to our participants were asked by our audience, but we don't expect anything less from our lovely audience from the My Politics family. And now for the last, perhaps most awaited section of the debate, the three statements, which means that each of the participants will have around 2 minutes to voice any of their concerns, opinions, or anything they'd like to say in general on the economy, on economic matters, on the European Union economy, especially as this is the topic of our debate. And let's start with Maciej. Maciej, the floor is yours. 2 minutes for a free statement.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jan. All right. Well, I would like to summarize that the European Union in itself is a hegemonic monster that lacks any form of democratic stability and enforces ideological truths on its victims through a threat of lack of funding that it takes from them regularly. I believe that one government is bad enough, so having two over your head is quite worse. When we look at Poland especially, or any other country in the European Union, actually, it doesn't have to be Poland, I don't believe that any social programs help people. I believe that it is a small amount. Why would you take 5,000 in taxes from somebody who makes 15 just to give them back another 1,000 through social programs? Same at a smaller level. If somebody makes 1,200 a month, taking 400 from them and giving them 500 isn't really a difference, is it? No, it's just a way of forcing people to rely on their governments and make them think they're necessary. Of course, governments in some form, authority is necessary. However, individual freedom and responsibility is what drives our peoples forward. Europe was built on a certain set of foundations, rules, and ideas. Europe and European peoples have their own ideas as well. It was a set of values, norms, and the reality of the times that made Europe what it is today. We are basically the leaders of the world in regards to culture and economy as a whole, obviously. But on our own, we can be weak. But the fact is, there is no such thing as a European Union that anybody is scared of. The world doesn't really look at themselves dealing with the European Union, but with individual countries. I don't want to live in a world where it becomes a single hegemonic United States of Europe. That seems like a nightmare. The individual freedom of each country and the people there is the most important. Just like countries shouldn't have to pay the European Union for them to get funds back, and by getting their money back, also be forced into an ideology they don't agree with. I don't believe that local governments should force ridiculous taxes on their people.
Thank you very much, Maciej. Thank you very much. And now, Alexandra, the floor is yours. 2 minutes on a free statement.
Okay, so to finish, I'd like to say that we should completely change the European system. Nowadays it's based on the free market and economic exchange. We should base it on solidarity. I think taxes are important, but we should tax the large companies that are stealing from the workers, and we should make this society more equal so that everyone can live in a peaceful society where the environment is not destroyed by those large companies, and where poverty is not reaching enormous ranges. For example, in France, there are 10 millions of people living in the state of poverty. It's not normal that in such developed country there are so much poor people, and it's increasing because of our economy that should be regulated, and that should it be based on solidarity and democracy and social policies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Maciej has voiced a point of information, wants to refer to Alexandra. Maciej,
Yes, Alexandra, I just wanted to say that concerningly sounds like a communist utopia. Just to point that out there, to be realistic. The fact is that we live in the real world where these problems exist, and I'd like to point out that it's the French government that created that economic situation. It's the French government that caused it, and more government. I'm just baffled that somebody thinks that some government caused something. It caused a huge problem with its regulations, with its elitist opinions on day-to-day life, and getting involved in places where it has no involved, and looking at this huge problem and thinking that more government is the answer. it's never worked. Where has more government ever in the history of the entire world saved lives and ended these issues? I mean, show me one place. If we want to talk about Cuba, Venezuela, every time in the name of social justice and economic equality, a government decided to fight for people and make their lives better, it just made their lives incredibly worse. We've seen it repeated in history. It's populist, socialist propaganda that literally leads to the demise of countries. So where, if you give me a rational example, will more government in history help? Like, what backup do we have to this? Thank you.
Alexandra, if you'd like to refer, the floor is yours.
Yes, and it has never been tried, because you cannot tell me that the Polish or the USSR was a communist. We are not communists in La France Insoumise. We believe that the government should regulate the economy, but we also think that the people should be in power. In France, for example, we want to completely change the constitution of France so that the people get to have more voices in France. For example, we think that the European Union is completely anti-democratic, and if we can't renegotiate the treaties, we will disobey. So yes, it's the people that make a state, and we don't think that there should be an elite. We think that we should be more on what the people decide, and maybe it will take time, because decision making takes time, but it's on what it should be based. And for now, the decisions that are made are never.
Alexandra, I'll be asking you to slowly finish off.
But Jean-Luc Mélenchon, you can know.
Okay, and I saw that Vadim would also like to respond to Alexandra. Vadim, the next minute is yours.
Yeah, very short. Germany is the best example of two completely different systems which existed on the ground of Germany. You have the same kind of people put in the different systems, and you could see life, the experiment of a socialist country and a democratic country. The one was poor in the end. They did have big lines at the stores to get milk, and that was the socialist freedom. And there was a wall. And on the other hand, you had the bad capitalist people who got rich and wealthy. And in the end, we saw the result, what happened. So this is something you can see very live here in Germany.
Alexandra, would you like to refer to Vadim now?
Yes, because it was not working, and it's not what we are exposing. If we could make this debate in French, I would have so much arguments to tell you, but it's why also in La France Insoumise, we are really internationalists too, and we think that these changes have to be made in every country, but without any cooperation between countries and economic cooperation, it will be difficult because of all those embargo and stuff. And yes, and I know the situation that were in those countries before. My family comes from Poland, and I know it very well, but it's not what we are proposing. It's something new, and that has never been tried.
Thank you very much.
How has it not been tried?
Maciej, I'm sorry, but you've reached the maximum of your points of information for this debate. But now,
you can read our program and you will see.
The next person is Vadim. Vadim, the next 2 minutes of a free statement from you.
I wish I dream of a Europe which is not the EU, but a Europe of free countries, free fatherlands, how we say it here, which protect the border of the EU or the European borders, let's say it that way, and but to secure the freedom inside. I'm dreaming of a Europe which finds or meets the reality of a multipolar world where the power shift from the US to China, and we are in between. We have to realize that we have to be taken seriously, and we are not taken seriously by raising taxes on carbon dioxide or ban plastic straws. This is not politics. This is garbage, and we need to be taken seriously as a European continent, let's say, and let's rethink Europe in a stronger way, in a way which the people will profit here.
Thank you very much, Vadim. And the next free statement belongs to Jano. Jano, the next 2 minutes are yours.
Well, thank you. Well, I was a bit surprised in how far I could agree on a statement of the Junge Alternative für Deutschland, because I don't really agree a lot of them. But also, I do have an optimistic view on the future of Europe, and I also want a future of Europe that works for people. And in our view, that's a Europe that's social, that's democratic, that tries to solve the issues that we need to solve together, like the climate, but also the migration crisis, all these things that we can't do alone. Also, Europe that leaves the states do what they can do at themselves, that the states sovereign, but also that states can work together to solve the problems that we all have. And also one Europe that's inclusive, Europe that's peaceful. I mean, Europe is in that sense really a project that the world has been looking at and it's really admiring, because we have 70 years of peace within the European Union, which really something that's absolutely special and that we should value a lot. So that's my dream for Europe, and I hope that you can go with that.
Thank you very much, Jano, for that. And now, finishing us off, Marketa, the next 2 minutes of your free statement are yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, and thank also to my colleagues who spoke before me. I would like to say something that has been said like decades ago by Jean Monnet, and that is that Europe will be forged in crisis, and it will be some of solution adapted for those crises. So basically, now we are standing in front of one great opportunity, but also it could mean like the end of the European Union as we know it, or European Union at all. And we also have to think about what kind of European Union we want to be part of. And I think, like, I want to be a part of a strong European Union, but it definitely does not mean that my state, Czech Republic, will be weak. For me, the best future for the European Union is like the Union being big in things that can have the greatest impact for benefit of all member states, and being small in the things that can be done on the national level better than at the European level. And I think by sticking this concept of subsidiarity, we can have a common future in European continent. And I think this debate was also one of the examples how it should have been done. We should talk with each other and also respect each other, because we have different opinions, but our future should be common. And it's up to us whether we will find a common ground or not, but I hope we will still stick to the concept of European Union, mostly as an economic union, but also with some benefits for the social states and so on. And I hope like the debate during the conference on future of Europe will bring something good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marketa, and thanks to all of our participants for answers, for their time and rebuttals. Very interesting debate we've seen here. And also, Marketa, thank you for summing up in a way the idea of my politics. We want to encourage young people to talk to each other, because this is what we think is often lacks in politics. And I think that we can all say that that our participants have done this, have done exactly this. Just before we end, I'm going to quickly switch to Polish and talk about our plan. Dziękuję bardzo Państwu za oglądanie. Na dzisiaj już nasza nowa ramówka, która właśnie z dniem dzisiejszym weszła w My Politics, się zakończyła. Dzień z My Politics się zakończył, ale zapraszamy już jutro o godzinie 17. Zapraszamy na pierwszy w historii My Politics Quickfire Interview z panem posłem Michałem Gramatyką, ten wywiad będę miał zaszczyt prowadzić ja, a następnie o godzinie 18 wywiad dnia. Zapraszam na wywiad dnia w imieniu Mikołaja Dowejki, na wywiad z współprzewodniczącą Partii Zielonych, panią poseł Tracz. Now switching back yet again to English, thank you very much yet again for participating in our debate. It's been a pleasure to host you, and I hope that we'll have the opportunity to speak and debate together soon enough. Thank you very much to all our participants, our audience. Yes, thank you.